was a fascinating place when I've been thinking about it. And there was the School of Languages, there was the AFTS, the pilot training scheme, there was the training of the cadets, the cadet officer training, there were the WRAAF doing their rookies there. It really was a very full and a varied sort of a place. It was great. So lots happening. For us working on the exchange, it was excellent because you had phone calls from, all over the place.
We all got up and usually showered first thing in the morning, then we went to breakfast. You took your own eating irons, that was your knife, fork and spoon, meals were fantastic at Point Cook. And breakfast, I mean, you can have just about anything. I mean, eggs in all sorts of ways, sausages, bacon, you name it. And then we'd have to wash our eating irons, take them back again, and we'd go to work. And then we'd come down for lunch. Well, where I was down the Burma Highway, we quite often had to walk back, and both ways. When we walked back the Burma Road, we quite often nearly had our hair parted by the trainee pilots. All the girls hated saluting. I didn't. I didn't mind saluting, but when we saluted originally, we saluted from the side, I'll show you, from like that. They now salute the American way. And the girls absolutely hated it, so I used to walk on the outside and it says, hup, 1, 2, 3, away, hup, 1, 2, and you saluted every second car because all the officers would be going to lunch as we were going back to work. So, of course, every second car that passed, I had to salute. So, but it never worried me.
Oh, panic night, we had to clean everything. And everybody was given a set area that they had to clean. You had to clean and polish everything in your room, do your floor, everything. And then you also had to do all the floors, clean the toilets, clean the showers, do all of that, cleaning of the whole place. That was panic night.
I came back one day to find my name on the board, and of course all the girls are going, hey, hoy, your name is on the board. I'm thinking, what have I done? What have I done? And it says cobweb. I'm thinking, where's this cobweb? I couldn't see it. It was humongous. It went from one corner of the door down, but I was short and I was walking under it. So I was supposed to redo my room, but I just got rid of the cobweb. But that was panic night and panic morning when we were inspected. They didn't use white gloves at Point Cook, but I believe in a lot of bases they used white gloves to check for dust and so forth. Mm.
Well, when I was at Canberra, I would have had about 30 women and various ranks, and they were all from various walks of life, some very supportive, but mostly you were away from them anyway. I mean, you didn't have much to do with the girls except check on them. You used to go panic nights, check on the areas where they lived to make sure that they were all clean, and keeping them orderly. And I encouraged one thing when I was at Fairburn. I encouraged the girls to have their own bed covers instead of the old Air Force covers. They could have their own covers in their bed covers in their room and make them as friendly and as feminine as they could. Because I like to think that just because they were in the service, they didn't have to become like the men. They still could retain their identity as females.
They'd have movies on at the theatre, but also we started up a review company, and we used to put on plays and singing, and God, some pictures of me there swinging the legs around and whatever. And I used to do monologues, and we'd do that kind of stuff. We also came down to Werribee it was the Mechanics Institute then, the old Mechanics Hall, and we put a show on down there to raise money for the local hospital.
You could play squash, you could play tennis, you could actually swim if it was summer. They had a sort of built-in swimming pool down in the beach, but it had a long pier to get out on, which was burning hot. And thongs I don't think had quite come in at that stage, so it was pretty hard getting down to the... Yes.
I couldn't swim, but the pier was all right, you could hang on, you know. And another thing we used to do, we'd go to Werribee South Beach, on the beach down there, and the cliffs are very different now. It was very, very different. But we used to go down and have a barbecue and whatever down there, and then walk back home. I'll think about it now. But the matron down there, the head of the nursing down there one time, she went off in her car and had been imbibing a little bit too much and went right over the edge of the cliff and the car into the water. We thought that was wonderful.
I think you were always aware that you were being watched. You had to, well, I suppose you had to be on your best behaviour. Not that you would probably be anything else, but not. But you had to be careful of what you did, how you spoke to people, your behaviour in the mess. Not the men didn't like women officers in those days, and the wives didn't like you either. Whenever there were mess functions, the wives didn't like you because they always saw you as a threat. So you had to work at it the whole time.
Normally, WRAAF quarters have single rooms or rooms shared by 4 airwomen, and the standard of accommodation is high. Many Air Force recreation rooms within range of a television station are equipped with TV receivers, and the attractively furnished recreation rooms provide comfortable facilities for off-duty hours. When the women of the WRAAF hold a dance in their recreation rooms at a RAF unit, there's always plenty of male company to provide partners.
There was a lot of fun in there. I mean, we used to meet in the cafe, meet the blokes in the cafe, and you know, there'd be dances and things, and you'd meet the fellows and the dancers, and some of them were villains. They used to come tearing around through the waffery, and you know, people would go on to parade the next morning, and there would be the WAF black undies strung up on the flagpole, and they'd go to put the flag on, and there'd be the black. Well, I mean, back in those days, black underwear was sexy as all get out, because otherwise you wore white, but the black undies was you know.
When I first went to Fairburn, one of the officers, he was a squadron leader from the Staff College, and he was a little short, tubby man, and I was standing in the officers' mess looking at the newspapers, and as he passed me, he touched me on the bottom. And before I even realised him being a senior officer to me, I turned around and I said, "Don't you ever do that to me again," in a loud enough voice that the whole mess heard. So I don't think he ever did that to anyone ever again. But they didn't chastise me, which he could have chastised me, of course, for speaking to him that way. But that was the only time I was ever approached or inappropriately, I felt, as a woman. Mostly you were respected. If you gave respect, then you got respect back.
She was a telephone operator, and she was doing the night shift, and she heard some noises outside, and she looked out and there was a plane outside her window. The cadets apparently had decided to play a prank, and they picked on the wrong person that night because you'd have to know Cole to understand, and she thought the Russians were coming, so she called the MPs and all the rest. She was not very popular on the base for a while.
If you went for leave, you had to sign out. You had to get a leave pass and sign out, and then when you came in, you signed in again to say that you were back in. Yeah, and if you weren't back in when you should have been in, you were in big trouble.
Now you could swim, play tennis or something like that, but on the whole, most people wanted to get off the base and go to the pictures in Melbourne, get your hair done.
On Saturdays, we always went into town, and the first thing we did was go and have a meal at. I'd never heard of crumpets before, and we found crumpets at this little cafe near the railway station, and Oh wow, I thought they were pretty good. So that was Saturday morning, and then before we came home, the bus left at 1 o'clock, and we just had time to go to a Chinese restaurant and have a meal at a Chinese restaurant, and then get the transport home.
Well, I think the majority of senior officers, they wouldn't be senior officers unless they'd proven themselves to be that way, to be a senior officer. And mostly we didn't have any problems with them at all. But I can remember you had to be very careful what you did. I can remember I was asked to join a tennis club in Canberra, but I had to get permission from the OC to travel in the corporal's car. I couldn't just go off in a car with a corporal. That was not permitted. You weren't allowed to fraternise, is the word.
I used to meet one of the cadet officers under the pines. There were these big pine trees that grew on the base, and we weren't allowed to meet, of course, but he used to talk to me on the phone at night time. You know, that's what they did, they'd ring up. And so Ian and I used to meet under the pines.
Oh, Margaret was one of the worst offenders. She used to dress mops up in overalls and bush hats and stick them outside windows. There were two in particular. One was called Herbert and I think the other was Charlie. But one girl nearly had conniptions when she found the one outside her room. And then another night we moved another girl's bedroom totally outside, made the bed up and all the rest of it. She walked into a room and then went, "What?" Looked around. So we had to go and move it all back in again. But on the whole, no. But we just all got on, in our barracks we got on well together because we were only one floor. Block 45 had 2 floors of girls. So because we were such a smaller group, most of us just got on like a house on fire.
When I think about it, it was a very lonely existence, and maybe if I'd thought about it again, maybe not, because you didn't have the companionship with the girls that you had before. But I still appreciated the job that I had, and I thought I did a good job.